The ancient temple stood forgotten in the heart of the Norwegian forest, its stone walls embraced by moss and time. Within its circular chamber, Princess Alara had remained for 3,000 years, her luminescent skin casting a pale blue glow against the darkness. She no longer counted the days. What purpose would it serve an immortal cursed to eternal solitude? Her people, the Astrani, had abandoned her here after her transgression against their highest law. The memories had dulled with time, but the punishment remained sharp. Guard the seal of eternity until the stars themselves burned out. Never to speak, never to be touched, never to return home. Alara glided silently across the chamber, her gossamer robes shimmering with embedded crystals that reflected her inner light. She had no need for food or drink, sustained only by the cosmic energy flowing through the seal, a circular stone tablet adorned with spiraling glyphs that pulsed with gentle violet energy. The first disturbance in centuries came as a distant crunching of leaves. Alara froze, her six-fingered hand hovering over the seal. The Astrani had chosen Earth for her imprisonment precisely because humans rarely ventured into these remote regions. Yet the sounds grew closer. Professor Theo Blackwell cursed under his breath as another branch snagged his jacket. His research grant was nearly depleted, his academic reputation hanging by a thread. The ancient carvings he'd discovered in a local village had led him here, his last hope for vindication. "This has to be it," he muttered, checking the coordinates on his GPS. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he ducked beneath a low branch. At 42, Theo was too old to be scrambling through forests on wild hunts, but the university wouldn't wait another semester for results. When the temple came into view, his breath caught. Unlike the crude stone structures common to Nordic settlements, this building featured perfectly fitted stones that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Impossible architecture. "Hello," he called, approaching cautiously. "Is anyone there?" Inside, Alara felt an unfamiliar sensation: fear. No human had ever found her sanctuary. She retreated to the shadows as the stranger entered, his flashlight beam dancing across the walls. Theo gasped as the light revealed intricate carvings unlike any Norse or Celtic patterns he'd studied. They depicted beings with elongated limbs and large eyes, surrounded by symbols resembling mathematical equations rather than language. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform bearing a circular stone. "Extraordinary," he whispered, pulling out his camera. From her hiding place, Alara observed him. Unlike the fur-clad hunters of centuries past, this human wore strange coverings and carried devices she didn't recognize. His face was weathered but kind, with lines that spoke of laughter and sorrow alike. As Theo photographed the seal, he noticed how the glyphs seemed to shift beneath his camera's flash. Entranced, he reached out to trace one with his fingertip. "Don't," the word escaped Alara's lips before she could stop herself, breaking millennia of silence. Too late, Theo's finger brushed against the seal. A shock wave of violet energy burst through the chamber, throwing him backward. Alara gasped as pain lanced through her chest. Something in the air changed, a pressure lifting, a bond breaking. When Theo regained his senses, he found himself staring into eyes like liquid silver. The woman, no, not a woman, stood over him, her blue-tinted skin glowing softly in the darkness, delicate antennae extending from her temples. "You have disturbed what should never be touched," she said, her voice melodic yet rusty from disuse. 3,000 years of penance, altered in an instant. Theo scrambled backward. What are you?" "I am Alara, third princess of the Astrani collective." She looked down at her hands in wonder. "And you have broken the first seal of my curse." Outside, storm clouds gathered suddenly in the clear sky, and distant thunder rumbled across the mountains, a warning from across the stars. Theo's academic mind raced to categorize what stood before him, humanoid but clearly not human, with features that defied evolutionary biology as he understood it. Yet it was her eyes that held him captive, ancient and weary, yet suddenly kindled with something like hope. "You spoke," Alara whispered, touching her throat in wonder. "I heard my own voice after 3 millennia of silence." Theo slowly rose to his feet, keeping his distance. "What is this place? What are you guarding?" "The seal of eternity." Alara gestured to the stone tablet where one of the spiral glyphs had darkened. "My punishment and my prison." "Punishment for what?" Theo asked, curiosity overtaking his caution. Alara turned away, her luminescence dimming slightly. "For daring to believe that worlds could touch without destruction." Outside, the sudden storm intensified. Rain lashed against the temple walls and lightning split the sky. "You should leave," Alara said, moving protectively toward the seal. "My people will have sensed the disturbance. They will send observers." "I'm not leaving until I understand what's happening here." Theo stood his ground. I've spent my career searching for evidence of extraterrestrial contact with ancient civilizations, if you're what I think you are. I am not your research subject, human. Her antennae quivered with indignation. Professor, he corrected automatically, Professor Theo Blackwell. To his surprise, a smile flickered across her face. You correct an alien princess about your title, you have courage, Professor. Their standoff was broken by a violent thunderclap that shook the temple's foundations. Alara gasped, clutching her chest as the seal pulsed with energy. What's happening? Theo moved toward her instinctively. The curse fights against its breaking, she explained through gritted teeth. Each seal contains part of my essence. When you touched it, you began a process that cannot be reversed. Rain began to leak through the ancient ceiling. Theo shrugged off his jacket and after a moment's hesitation offered it to her. Alara stared at it in confusion. For the rain, he explained. She reached out tentatively, her 6 fingers brushing against his as she took the garment. The contact sent a visible shiver of blue electricity between them. Oh, she withdrew her hand as if burned. Physical contact with another being, it's been so long. Theo helped her drape the jacket over her shoulders, careful not to touch her again. How long have you been alone here? Since before your Rome fell, before your Christ walked. Her silver eyes grew distant. I watched forests grow and wither, civilizations rise and crumble, all from within these walls. As night deepened, Theo built a small fire from broken timber. The storm outside had settled into a gentle rain, creating a strange sense of intimacy in the ancient chamber. Why Earth, he asked, of all places for exile? Alara settled opposite him, the firelight playing across her alien features. A forgotten outpost at the edge of traveled space. My people visited during your Stone Age, establishing monitoring stations, but deemed your species too primitive for formal contact. Her lips curved slightly. They underestimated your curiosity. A common human trait, Theo admitted, not always to our benefit. As they talked through the night, the distance between them gradually lessened. Theo shared stories of his failed marriage, his academic struggles, the persistent theories that had made him an outsider among his peers. Alara spoke of her world, a binary star system with 3 habitable planets, technology beyond human comprehension, and social structures rigid enough to exile a princess eternally for transgressing their laws. By dawn, something had shifted between them. When Theo finally dozed off against a stone column, Alara watched him with growing fascination. She reached out, hovering her hand just above his sleeping face, tracing his features without touching. On the seal, a second glyph had begun to fade. Days passed as Theo made the temple his temporary research base, returning to his hotel only for supplies. Each morning, he expected Alara to have vanished, a hallucination born of academic desperation. Yet she remained, increasingly corporeal, increasingly human in her expressions. Why do you return? She asked on the 5th day, as he unpacked his laptop and satellite phone. You're literally the greatest discovery in human history, Theo replied, but the academic detachment in his voice had softened. Is that the only reason? Her antennae tilted forward, a gesture he'd learned indicated curiosity. Theo hesitated. No, he admitted finally. There's something else happening here, something I don't understand. Alara approached the seal, which now showed 3 darkened glyphs. My curse had 5 components: silence, solitude, immobility, emotionlessness, and immortality. She traced the faded symbols. When you touch the seal, you broke the first. Each day since, another weakens. And when all 5 break? Her silver eyes met his. Either I return home to face justice anew, or I become as mortal as you, never to see my world again. She moved closer, her luminescence brightening. Both terrify me equally. That evening, as Theo worked on translations, Alara sat beside him, watching the laptop screen with fascination. Her shoulder almost touched his, almost but not quite. You asked what crime earned me this punishment, she said quietly. I loved a being I should not have. Theo looked up, waiting. An explorer from the Cygnus Collective. Our empires had maintained uneasy peace for millennia, but personal connections were forbidden. Her voice grew distant. We met during diplomatic functions, exchanged knowledge, ideas. Then more, when discovered, he was executed. I was considered too valuable for death. A princess has genetic lines worth preserving, so eternal exile became my sentence. That's barbaric, Theo whispered. My people value order above all else. A single luminescent tear tracked down her cheek. The irony is that after 3,000 years, I'd almost forgotten the feeling that doomed me, until now. The air between them charged with unspoken meaning. Theo's hand moved toward hers but stopped short, recalling the electric shock of their first contact. Later that night, as Alara slept, a new need as her immortality faded, Theo's satellite phone buzzed. "Blackwell, where the hell have you been?" Dr. Marcus Jennings, his department head, sounded furious. "The university's been trying to reach you for days. Your preliminary report was due last week." "I've found something extraordinary, Marcus," Theo whispered, moving away from Alara's sleeping form. "I need more time. The board meets tomorrow. Without results, your funding's gone." After ending the call, Theo noticed Alara watching him, fully awake. "You risk much to stay here," she observed. "Some discoveries are worth the risk." The next morning, Theo hiked to the nearest village for additional supplies, leaving Alara with his camera to document changes in the seal. When he returned, he found her examining the photos she'd taken, her expression troubled. "The fourth glyph is fatting faster than the others," she explained. "The emotionlessness seal, it's breaking too quickly." As if to demonstrate, she suddenly clutched her chest, gasping. Theo rushed to her side, instinctively taking her hand. This time there was no electric shock, only the cool smoothness of her skin against his. Their eyes met in shared surprise. Slowly, deliberately, Alara twined her 6 fingers between his 5, marveling at the difference and the similarity. "I feel," she whispered, wonder and fear mingling in her voice. "After all this time, I feel." The moment shattered at the sound of footsteps outside the temple. Theo recognized the voice immediately. "Marcus." "Blackwell, I know you're in there. The village mayor told me where to find you." Alara pulled away, retreating to the shadows as Theo moved to intercept his colleague at the entrance. But Marcus pushed past him, stopping abruptly as he caught sight of the seal, and then of Alara, her alien nature unmistakable even in the dim light. "My God," Marcus breathed, "what have you found?" Before Theo could respond, the seal began to pulse with violent energy. The fourth glyph darkened completely as Alara doubled over, centuries of suppressed emotions flooding back at once. "She needs to be in a proper research facility," Marcus insisted, packing the temple floor. Night had fallen and Alara had retreated to the far side of the chamber, her glow dimmed to nearly nothing. "Think of what we could learn, Theo. Biochemistry, technology, interstellar travel." "She's not a specimen," Theo snapped, "and she's right here listening." Marcus lowered his voice. "Be reasonable. Your career is hanging by a thread. This discovery could secure your legacy, our legacy." A soft chime interrupted them, a sound like crystal bells that emanated from the seal. Alara rushed forward, her face twisted with fear. "They're coming," she whispered. "Sentinel drones, at least 3. She turned to Theo, urgent. "The fourth seal breaking has triggered an automated response. We must leave now." "Leave but the seal goes where I go. Its physical form is merely an anchor." She pressed her palm against the stone tablet, which began to shrink until it was no larger than a pocket watch, the final glyph still glowing. "The true seal is bound to my essence." Marcus stepped between them. "Now wait just a minute." A beam of harsh blue light cut through the darkness outside, sweeping the forest floor. Alara grabbed the miniaturized seal in Theo's hand. "Choose now, Professor, stay or come with me." Theo looked at Marcus, at his career and his old life, then back at Alara. "Lead the way." They fled into the forest as 3 metallic spheres the size of basketballs descended from the clouds, their surfaces covered in the same glyphs as the seal. Marcus shouted after them, but his voice was soon lost in the distance. Theo's ancient Volvo barely started, but soon they were racing down mountain roads as the Sentinel drones tracked them from above. "Where are we going?" Theo asked, swerving around a tight bend. "Somewhere with a clear view of Cassiopeia," Alara replied, clutching the miniaturized seal to her chest. "I need to see my home stars to complete the final breaking." They drove through the night, the drones never more than a kilometer behind. Alara guided them to an abandoned mountain observatory she had observed from afar during her centuries of imprisonment. "How did you know about this place?" Theo asked as they climbed the crumbling stairs to the domed building. "When you're stationary for millennia, you notice everything that changes in your view." Her silver eyes reflected the starlight. "This place was built, used, and abandoned all within my watch." Inside, the massive telescope was covered with dust but seemed operational. As Theo worked to power up the old generators, Alara studied the seal. Only one glyph remained illuminated. "When this final seal breaks, what happens?" Theo asked, joining her under the dome. "My immortality ends. I become like you, finite and free." She looked up at him. "Unless I choose to return." "And if you returns?" "I face judgment anew, perhaps another exile, perhaps worse." Her luminescence pulsed with her quickening heartbeat. "But I would live eternally as my kind was designed to do." The drones circled outside, their scanning beams sweeping across the observatory windows. "They won't enter yet," Alara explained. They're programmed to observe until the final choice is made. Theo gently turned the telescope toward Cassiopeia. It's your decision, Alara, I won't influence you. But you already have. She moved closer, her body now radiating warmth instead of light, another sign of her transformation. 3,000 years of solitude and then you, curious, passionate, fragile human that you are. They stood beneath the stars, the gap between their worlds never seeming smaller. Alara's hand found his, her skin now almost the same temperature as his own. I've never been touched like this, she confessed. My people communicate through light patterns and mental resonance. Physical contact is rare and ritualistic. Theo gently raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her palm. Alara gasped, her entire body shimmering with blue light. And that, he asked softly. Entirely foreign, she whispered, and entirely wonderful. Under the dome of stars, surrounded by the mechanical sentinels of her world, Theo slowly drew her into his arms. Her body trembled against his, not with fear but with centuries of longing suddenly unbound. When their lips met, the seal between them pulsed with violet energy. Later, as they lay together on his spread jacket, Alara traced patterns on his chest while explaining what would happen at dawn. The final breaking requires intent, she said, a willing choice to embrace mortality or return to my people. And if you stay, Theo asked, running his fingers through her starlight-colored hair. I live one human lifetime, I age, I die. Her voice held no fear, only wonder. I experience everything your kind takes for granted. With me, he asked, suddenly vulnerable. Alara smiled, touching his face. That would be my hope, Professor. Outside, the drone's lights intensified as the first ray of dawn broke over the mountains. The final confrontation was at hand. Dawn painted the observatory in gold and amber as the drones forced their way inside, metal spheres unfolding into tripodal forms with crystalline centers. Alara stood facing them, the miniaturized seal clutched in her palm, its final glyph pulsing urgently. Sentinel units, she addressed them in a language that sounded like wind through crystal chimes. I recognize the authority of the Astroni Collective. The crystals at their centers glowed in response, communication Theo couldn't understand. They say my sentence remains, Alara translated, her voice tight. 3,000 years was the minimum. The permanent exile stands unless I return to face the High Council. Theo stepped forward. Can they understand me? Yes, their translation matrices are comprehensive. He addressed the nearest drone. She suffered enough, your justice has been served. The crystal flashed. They say justice is not punitive but preservative, Alara explained. The boundaries between worlds must remain. Like the boundaries between your empire and the Cygnus Collective, Theo challenged. How did that isolation serve anyone? The drone's lights pulsed rapidly, their tripodal legs shifting on the dusty floor. Alara's eyes widened. What is it? Theo asked. The Cygnus conflict, she seemed stunned. It ended a century ago, an alliance was formed after centuries of diplomatic effort. She turned to the drones. Is this true? More crystalline communication followed. The laws I broke, she said slowly, they were changed. Interspecies connections are now permitted within strict protocols. Her voice broke. The one I loved died for nothing. I've been exiled for a crime that's no longer recognized. Theo took her hand. Then there's no reason for you to return. Your punishment was unjust. The drones moved closer, their legs creating a metallic chorus on the observatory floor. It's not that simple, Alara said. Temporal paradox laws still apply. What was criminal when committed remains punishable regardless of later legal evolution. She looked up at Theo, her eyes shimmering. But it gives me a choice now, a real choice. The seal in her hand began to vibrate. The final glyph, the one binding her immortality, flashed urgently. It must be decided now, she whispered. Dawn fully breaks and with it my time to choose. The drones formed a triangle around them, their crystals pulsing in unison. What happens if you break the final seal? Theo asked. I become mortal immediately, my connection to my homeworld severs. She touched his face. I become as human as biology allows. And if I help you break it? The feedback could harm you. This magic, this technology, it wasn't designed for human interaction. Outside, clouds gathered with unnatural speed, echoing the cosmic disturbance of that first night in the temple. Princess Alara of the Astroni, the lead drone projected in a voice like chiming glass. Make your declaration. Alara looked at the seal, then at Theo, her expression resolute. I choose. The observatory door burst open. Marcus stumbled in, flanked by two local police officers. There they are, he shouted, The woman is not human, we need to contain her for study. The disruption rippled through the energy field the drones had established. The seal in Alara's hand flared with blinding violet light, its power destabilizing. No, she cried out, the breaking must be controlled. Theo didn't hesitate. He wrapped his hands around hers, enveloping the seal between their palms. Pain shot through him like fire and ice simultaneously, but he held on. Together, he gasped. Their eyes locked. In that moment, 3,000 years of solitude met 42 years of searching. The final glyph shattered with a sound like a crystal goblet breaking. A shockwave of violet energy exploded outward. The drones were thrown against the walls, their crystalline centers cracking. Marcus and the officers were knocked unconscious. Through the observatory dome, a beam of light shot upward into the morning sky, visible for hundreds of kilometers. When Theo could see again, Alara was kneeling beside him. Her luminescence was gone. Her skin had taken on a warm peach tone, though still with the faintest blue undertone. Her antennae had receded to small, jewel-like marks on her temples. You look, he began. Human, she asked, touching her face uncertainly. Beautiful, he corrected, reaching for her hand. Are you? Mortal, finite, she smiled, tears flowing freely down her now warm cheeks. Free. The broken drones twitched on the floor, attempting to reconnect to their network. Warning, one chimed weakly. Protocol violation, seal breach irreversible. They can't take you back, Theo asked. They have no jurisdiction over a mortal being. Alara helped him to his feet. The Astroni only monitor immortal species and technologies. I'm no longer their concern. As the sun fully cleared the horizon, they stood together watching the damaged drones slowly ascend, returning to whatever unseen ship awaited them beyond Earth's atmosphere. What now? Theo asked. A princess and an archaeologist with no career, we make quite the pair. Alara's laughter, her first true laughter in 3 millennia, echoed through the observatory. Now we live, Professor Blackwell, one day at a time like all mortals do. She held up her palm, where a tiny scar in the shape of the seal remained. I have 3,000 years of knowledge about your world from watching it change. Perhaps we can find a use for that. Together, he asked, drawing her close. Together, she confirmed, rising on tiptoes to press her lips against his. For as long as our finite lives allow. Outside, the storm clouds dispersed, leaving behind a sky of perfect blue. In the distance, Marcus began to stir, but the story he would tell, of hallucinations and stress-induced delusions, would never capture the truth of what had transpired. As Alara and Theo left the observatory hand in hand, the last fragment of alien technology on Earth crumbled to stardust behind them, scattering in the morning breeze. Princess no more, exile no more, Alara stepped into her first day of freedom with the sun warm on her face and the future, gloriously uncertain and wonderfully finite, stretching before them.